Hello, dear learners of English. I'm Nguyen, and I write stories for the heart, for those of you who are building a new language, one word, one emotion at a time. Today's story is about a quiet strength that can grow even in the deepest pain. It's about a woman who chose truth over tears, and the unexpected turn that truth can take. Sometimes, the loudest statements are made in the calmest voices. Let's read together. The late afternoon sun, the color of weak tea, filtered through the blinds of Anna's small home office. It was a room that had once echoed with shared laughter, dreams whispered over steaming mugs of coffee. Now, it was her command center. For 3 weeks, ever since the jagged piece of truth had lodged itself in her heart, this room had been her sanctuary and her workshop. The initial wound had been a physical shock, like ice water thrown in her face on a winter morning. It wasn't a dramatic discovery. There were no lipstick-stained collars, no mysterious late-night calls. It was a series of small, almost insignificant things. Mark, her husband of 12 years, suddenly protective of his phone. Unexplained charges on a credit card statement for dinners she hadn't attended. A new, distant politeness in his eyes where warmth used to reside. Each was a tiny crack, but together they formed a fissure that split her world. She had followed the trail with a cold, methodical precision that surprised even herself. It led her to Sarah, a colleague of Mark's, and then, with a little more digging, to David, Sarah's husband. The pain was a constant, dull ache, a stone in her chest. But beneath the pain, a different feeling began to stir, a steely resolve. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the erasure of their shared history, the devaluation of her trust, her life. It felt like a slow theft of her own story, and she, Anna, the quiet woman who usually avoided confrontation, decided she would write the final chapter herself. Anna wasn't a saint. She knew her own flaws. Perhaps she had grown too comfortable, too complacent in their marriage. Perhaps she hadn't seen, or hadn't wanted to see, the growing distance. But this betrayal, so calculated, so complete, demanded more than just a tearful accusation or a slammed door. It demanded truth, laid bare. Mark, her Mark, the man who had vowed to cherish her, had become a stranger. He was a good man, or so she had always believed. Perhaps he was simply weak, easily led by the thrill of something new, the flattery of a younger woman. Sarah, from what little Anna could gather, seemed ambitious, driven. And David. He was an unknown, a blank slate in this painful equation. The plan for the confrontation was simple, yet meticulous. Anna had booked a private meeting room at a quiet, downtown bistro for a Saturday afternoon. She sent 2 separate, carefully worded emails to Mark. Mark, we need to talk about the future of our marriage. It's important. Please meet me at the Willow Creek Bistro, private room B, Saturday at 3 p.m. Don't be late. She knew he disliked public scenes. A private room would appeal to his desire to manage appearances. To David, whose email she had found through a professional networking site. Mr. Coleman, my name is Anna Hayes. I believe our spouses, Mark Hayes and Sarah Coleman, are having an affair. I have information that concerns us both deeply. I've booked a private room at the Willow Creek Bistro, Saturday at 3 p.m., room B. I understand this is shocking, but I believe a direct conversation is necessary. I hope you'll consider coming. Sincerely, Anna Hayes. She had hesitated before sending this one. Was it fair to drag him into her method? But truth, she reasoned, belonged to him as much as it did to her. The days leading up to Saturday were a blur of forced normalcy. She went to work, cooked meals she barely ate, and spoke to Mark in carefully neutral tones. Inside, she was a tightly coiled spring. Her small apartment, usually a haven, felt like a stage. The scent of old books and Earl Grey tea, once comforting, now seemed to mock her with memories of a life that was a lie. She thought of her grandmother, a woman who had endured war and loss with quiet dignity, her strength a hidden river. Anna clung to that image, that heritage of resilience. Dignity, her grandmother used to say in Vietnamese, is the last thing they can take from you, unless you give it away. Saturday arrived, cool and overcast. Anna dressed carefully in a simple navy dress. She looked at her reflection, pale, her eyes shadowed, but her gaze steady. She was a woman walking towards a cliff, not knowing if she would find a bridge or an abyss. She arrived at the bistro 20 minutes early. Room B was small, impersonal, with a polished mahogany table and 4 chairs. It was perfect. She sat facing the door, her hands resting calmly on the table. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs. David Coleman arrived first, exactly at 3 p.m. He was taller than she expected, with tired eyes and a hesitant expression. He looked like a man carrying an invisible weight. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes. Please come in, Mr. Coleman. Thank you for coming. He sat down, placing his worn briefcase on the floor beside him. I wasn't sure what to expect." "I understand," Anna said. "I just believe in facing things directly." A few minutes later, Mark walked in. He stopped short when he saw David. His face, initially set in an expression of wary annoyance, paled. "Anna, what is this? Who is this?" he stammered, his gaze darting between Anna and David. "This is David Coleman, Sarah's husband," Anna said, her voice even, betraying none of the storm inside her. "Please, Mark, sit down." Mark remained standing, his hands clenching and unclenching. "I don't understand what's going on. This is some kind of ambush?" "It's a conversation, Mark," Anna replied. "One we should have had a long time ago. One you should have had with Mr. Coleman." David, who had been watching Mark with a deepening frown, finally spoke. "So, it's true then? What Mrs. Hayes suggested in her email?" Mark looked from Anna to David, trapped. He seemed to shrink, the confident facade crumbling. He finally sank into a chair, avoiding their eyes. It's complicated. Is it?" Anna asked, her voice still quiet but edged with steel. "It seems quite simple to me. You're having an affair with his wife. You've been lying to me, to him. You've broken vows, shattered trust. What part is complicated, Mark?" Mark mumbled something about being unhappy, about things not being the same. Standard excuses. Anna listened, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt. She let the silence in the room grow heavy after he finished. "I found emails, Mark," Anna stated. "Hotel receipts. A gift I didn't receive. It's not complicated. It's a betrayal." David flinched at the mention of receipts. He looked older suddenly. "Sarah. She said she was working late. So many nights." The air in the room was thick with unspoken pain and deceit. Anna had expected this part. The denials, the deflections, the shame. She had braced herself for it. Her plan was simple. Lay out the truth, calmly, and let it do its work. No shouting, no hysterics. Her revenge was the cold, clear light of reality. "I'm not here to recriminate endlessly," Anna continued, her gaze fixed on Mark, but her words including David. "I'm here because I deserve the truth. Mr. Coleman deserves the truth. Our marriages, whatever they were built on a foundation. You, Mark, and presumably Sarah, decided to undermine that foundation." Mark finally looked up, his eyes pleading. "Anna, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you like this." "Didn't you?" Anna's voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of her broken heart. "What did you think would happen, Mark?" It was then that the door opened again. Sarah stood there, her face flushed, eyes wide with panic. She had clearly not expected this scene. "Mark, what's... David? Anna?" Her voice was a high-pitched squeak. She had obviously been called by a frantic Mark after he received Anna's initial email. Perhaps he'd asked her to be nearby, or she had insisted. Mark looked even more distressed. "Sarah, I told you not to come." "What is going on?" Sarah demanded, stepping into the room. Anna watched her. This was the woman her husband had chosen, the woman who had been a willing participant in the deceit. "We're discussing your affair, Sarah," Anna said, her composure unwavering. Sarah's eyes darted towards David, then back to Mark. She seemed to be looking for an escape, a way to spin the narrative. Then, something shifted in her expression. A flicker of something that wasn't just panic. It was something else. She took a deep breath. "Look, this is a mess. Yes, Mark and I, we made a mistake. A terrible mistake." David let out a sound, a choked sigh. "But there's something else," Sarah said, her voice trembling now. She looked directly at David, her eyes filling with tears. "Something you all need to know. Especially you, David." The room fell silent. Anna felt a tremor of unease. This wasn't part of her script. Sarah pressed a hand to her stomach. "I'm pregnant." The air sucked out of the room. Anna stared, speechless. Mark's jaw dropped. His face, already pale, turned ashen. This was a complication he clearly hadn't anticipated. His affair was about to become much more permanent, much more binding than he'd ever intended. This was a new level of betrayal for Anna. David looked as if he'd been struck. He stared at Sarah, his expression unreadable. "And the baby?" Anna finally managed to ask, her voice barely audible, addressing Sarah but looking at Mark, the implication clear. His child with another woman. The ultimate irreversible bond. Sarah's gaze was fixed on her husband, David. Tears were now streaming down her face. "David," she choked out. "Mark is not the father. The baby is yours." Silence. A silence so profound it was like the world had stopped turning. Anna felt a strange, disorienting wave wash over her. She had prepared for betrayal, for lies, for the pain of infidelity. She had not prepared for this. Mark looked utterly bewildered, his mouth slightly open. David slowly rose from his chair. He walked towards Sarah, his steps heavy. He stopped in front of her, searching her face. "Mine?" he whispered. "Sarah, are you sure?" "Yes," she sobbed. I was scared. Things have been so bad between us. I know about your doubts, your unhappiness. When Mark started paying attention to me, I was lost. It was wrong, so wrong. But the baby, I went to the doctor last week. The timing. It's yours, David. It has to be." Anna watched them, the betrayed wife suddenly an observer of a different, equally painful drama. Her meticulously planned confrontation had just been hijacked by a revelation far more complex than simple adultery. The lines of victim and perpetrator, so clear in her mind, were now blurred. Mark finally found his voice, a weak, confused sound. "But you told me. You implied." Sarah turned to him, her face a mask of misery and a strange new resolve. "I know what I implied, Mark. I was confused and desperate. But this changes everything. The affair was a symptom of how lost I was, how lost we both were, David." She looked back at her husband. David didn't speak for a long moment. He just looked at his wife, at her tear-streaked face, her hand on her stomach. Then he slowly reached out and placed his hand over hers. "We need to talk, Sarah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Alone." He looked at Anna, then at Mark. I think we're done here." He guided Sarah gently towards the door. Before leaving, he paused and looked back at Anna. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm sorry for your pain. And thank you for the truth, in more ways than one." They left, closing the door softly behind them. Anna and Mark were alone in the quiet room. The grand confrontation, the strategic unveiling of truth, had ended not with a bang, but with this bewildering, messy, human implosion. Mark stared at the closed door, then at Anna. His face was a canvas of conflicting emotions: shock, a strange relief, and a dawning understanding of the magnitude of his own foolishness. "Anna," he began. Anna raised a hand. "There's nothing left to say, Mark." Her anger, her need for a particular kind of justice, felt deflated, replaced by a vast emptiness and a strange, unexpected clarity. The affair was real. His betrayal was real. But the imagined future she had braced herself for, Mark tied to Sarah by a child, had vanished. She stood up. "I wanted you to face the truth, Mark, and you have, in ways neither of us expected." He looked broken, small. "What now, Anna?" "Now," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We get a divorce. Now I start again." There was no triumph in her words, only a profound weariness, and a flicker of something like peace. The path ahead was uncertain, lonely perhaps, but it would be hers, built on truth. She thought of her grandmother again, dignity, and the strength to walk away when a story is truly over. She walked out of the room, out of the bistro, and into the pale afternoon light. The air felt cleaner somehow. The city sounds, once jarring, now seemed like a distant hum. The future was unwritten, but for the first time in weeks, Anna felt she held the pen. Her revenge hadn't been fiery or destructive. It had been the quiet, unwavering act of bringing secrets into the light, and in that light, everyone's path had irrevocably changed. The cost was a marriage, a shared past, but what she had gained was herself. And so Anna's story takes a turn, showing us that life is often more complicated than we think. The path to healing and self-discovery can be unexpected. For those learning English, notice how simple words can carry deep emotions. Truth, pain, alone, future. These are universal. Remember that understanding others and ourselves is a journey, much like learning a new language. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep finding your own voice. Until next time, this is Nguyen.